Hello everyone, I wish you all a wonderful day. Today, we will discover the story of Quan walking through the burning heat to find a hidden pool full of large, wild clams, all to bring home something nourishing for Tieu Lac. Was his difficult journey under the harsh sun truly worth it? If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. The surface of the stream looked calm, almost too calm. If someone only stood on the bank and looked from above, they might think the water was shallow and gentle, the kind of place where a person could step in without worry. But Quan knew better. The upper part of the stream was always different from the lower parts near the village. The rocks were larger here. The current was not fast, but it moved quietly between stone gaps, and some areas dropped deeper without warning. That was why he moved slowly. Quan placed one foot down first, testing the stone beneath the water before shifting his weight onto it. The coldness around his ankles gave him a small moment of relief after the long walk under the sun, but it did not make him careless. He looked down carefully, one hand holding on to a nearby rock, the other hand reaching into the water. Behind him, Milu stood on the bank. The little dog did not jump in. It only lowered its head, sniffed the wet stones, then looked at Quan as if it understood that this was not a place to run around. Every now and then, Milu let out a soft sound, not loud enough to disturb the quiet stream, but enough to remind Quan that he was not completely alone. Quan smiled faintly. "Stay there, Milu," he said. "This place is slippery." Then he turned his attention back to the water. At first, he found nothing. His fingers touched mud, small stones, and old leaves that had sunk to the bottom. Some stones were smooth, but others were sharp enough to make him pull his hand back quickly. He bent lower, searching beneath the edges of rocks where wild clams might hide from the current. The sun above the trees was growing stronger. Even though he was standing in cool water, his back still felt hot. Sweat ran down from his forehead and dropped near his eyes. Quan lifted his arm and wiped it away with his sleeve, then continued searching. He thought of Tieu Lac. By now, she should still be at the farm. Maybe she was watering the vegetables, just like he had asked. Maybe she was standing near the newly planted trees, carefully giving each one a little water. Quan could almost see her in his mind, moving slowly in the yard, trying to be useful but also trying to remember his reminder not to stay too long under the sun. That thought made his heart soften, but it also made him more determined. He had not come all this way just to return empty-handed. Quan shifted a few steps farther into the stream. The water rose above his ankles, then to the lower part of his legs. The stones underneath became more uneven. He had to bend his knees slightly to keep his balance. Then his fingers touched something different. It was not a stone. Quan paused. He pressed his hand down again, feeling carefully through the water. The object was smooth, rounded, and firm. He dug around it gently, lifting away the mud that covered its edge. A moment later, he pulled it up from the bottom. It was a wild clam. Not small, not dry, not broken. A real, fresh clam from the upper stream. Quan looked at it for a moment, and even in the harsh heat, a smile appeared on his face. "So there really are clams here," he murmured. Milu lifted its head when it heard his voice. Quan placed the clam into the small basket he had brought, then turned back to the same area. If there was one, there might be more nearby. He lowered his hand again, this time searching with more focus. And sure enough, he found another, then another. Some were buried deeper in the mud. Some were tucked between stones, as if they'd been hiding there for a long time. Quan had to use both hands for a few of them, carefully loosening the mud around the shell before pulling them free. Each time one came up from the water, he checked it, rinsed it quickly, and placed it into the basket. The sound of shells touching each other slowly grew clearer. At first, it was only a small sound. Then it became steady. One by one, the clams began to fill the bottom of the basket. Quan's breathing grew heavier, but not from disappointment. The work was tiring because he had to bend, stand, move, and balance himself over slippery stones. His legs were tense, his arms were wet. His shirt clung tightly to his back, but inside him there was a quiet excitement that made the fatigue easier to bear. He had found them. He had really found them. And they were not just a few small clams. After searching around the first pool, Quan moved toward the deeper part ahead. The water there looked darker, not because it was dirty, but because the bottom dropped lower and the rocks cast shadows over the surface. He stood at the edge for a moment and studied it carefully. This was the kind of place he had been thinking about since the villagers mentioned the stream. A deep pool, a place people did not always want to enter because the path was hard and the water was uncertain. Quan tightened his grip on the basket handle. He remembered Tieu Lac's face before he left. She had wanted to come with him. If he had brought her here, he would not have been able to let her step into this pool. Even he had to be careful. For her, it would have been too risky. His decision had been right. Quan took one slow step forward. The water rose higher, nearly reaching his knees. The coldness wrapped around his legs, but under the surface, the stones were much more slippery than before. He moved 1 foot at a time, keeping his body low and steady. Milu, standing behind, suddenly barked once. Quan turned his head. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm just going a little farther." Then he reached down again. This time, he did not have to search long. His hand touched a shell almost immediately. Quan's eyes changed. He pulled it up, and for a second, he simply stared at it. The clam in his hand was much bigger than the ones he had already found near the shallower rocks. Its shell was thick, heavy, and clean after he rinsed it in the stream. This was exactly the kind of clam he had hoped for. A big one, a good one, the kind that could make a proper dish, something fresh and nourishing. Quan let out a quiet laugh, surprised and relieved at the same time. "Tieu Lac will be happy when she sees this," he said. Those words came out naturally, without him even thinking. And once he found the first large clam, the others seemed to appear one after another. Quan searched around the edges of the deep pool, feeling between the stones and under the mud. The more he searched, the more he found. Some were so large that he had to use both hands to pull them out carefully. A few were hidden in narrow places, and he had to move the stones little by little to avoid cutting his fingers. The sun kept burning above him. The heat from the bank pressed down like a heavy cloth, and the light reflected from the water made his eyes ache. But every clam he found gave him another reason to continue. This was not just about catching something from the stream anymore. It was about bringing something back for the person waiting at home. Back at the farm, Tieu Lac had finished watering the small trees. She stood near the vegetable beds and looked toward the gate again. The road was empty. Quan had not returned yet. She knew he would not come back so quickly. The stream was far, and the place he had chosen was not easy to reach. Still, every time the yard became quiet, her eyes naturally moved toward the road. The sun had climbed higher now. The heat was stronger than before, and the air above the ground seemed to shimmer. Tieu Lac wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. She looked at the plants once more, then remembered Quan's reminder. If it gets too hot, go inside and rest. This time she listened. She carried the watering can back, placed it in the shade, and stepped into the kitchen area. The moment she entered, the sunlight behind her felt even harsher, as if the outside world had become a burning field. Inside, it was still warm, but at least there was shade. Tieu Lac stood quietly for a moment, then looked toward the stove. A thought slowly came to her. Quan had gone out under such harsh sun to find something for her. He had walked to the stream, crossed rocks, stepped into cold water, and searched by hand because he wanted to bring back a nourishing dish. Then what could she do while waiting for him? She looked around the kitchen and soon saw the black beans stored nearby. Her eyes softened. Black bean sweet soup. It was simple, but on a day like this, it was exactly the kind of thing that could cool the body after being under the sun. Quan had gone out into the heat for her. Then she would prepare something cool and gentle for him when he came back. Tieu Lac took the beans out, washed them carefully, and placed them into a pot. As the water began to heat, she lowered the fire and watched the first steam rise. Outside, the farm was still burning under the summer sun. At the stream, Quan was still bent over the deep pool, pulling one large clam after another from the hidden mud. And between those two places, one person was searching through the heat while the other was quietly waiting at home. Neither of them said much, but everything they did was for each other. At the deep pool, Quan kept searching. The first large clam had already made him feel that the long walk was worth it, but the pool seemed to hold more than he expected. Every time he thought he had cleared one small area, his fingers touched another hard shell beneath the mud. Some were buried so deeply that only one edge could be felt. Some stayed under flat stones where the water moved slowly, almost hidden from anyone who did not search carefully. Quan did not rush. He knew that if he moved too quickly, he could slip, cut his hand, or stir the mud so much that he would not be able to see anything. So he worked patiently, bending down, feeling through the cold water, lifting each clam with care, then rinsing it before placing it into the basket. The basket was no longer light. At first, it had only carried a few clams, enough to make him smile and think of a simple soup, but now the bottom was already covered. The shells pressed against each other with a firm, heavy sound every time he moved it. Quan looked at them and felt a quiet satisfaction rise in his chest. This was not a wasted trip. The sun was cruel. The path was rough. The water was deep and slippery, but he had found something good. He imagined Tieu Lac's expression when she saw the clams. She would probably widen her eyes first, then ask him if he had really caught all of them by himself. Maybe she would worry when she saw how wet and tired he looked. Maybe she would tell him to sit down before doing anything else. Thinking of that, Quan laughed softly to himself. Even before returning, he could already hear her voice. "And don't work anymore. Rest first." That thought made the difficult work feel lighter. Still, Quan understood his limit. He was not someone who forced himself just to prove he could endure more. The heat had grown stronger, and even in the stream, his body was becoming tired. His legs had been tense for too long, and his hands were starting to feel numb from searching in the cold water. He looked farther upstream. The stream continued beyond the deep pool, turning behind another cluster of rocks. Perhaps there were more things there. Perhaps another pool was hiding even bigger clams. On another day, he might have continued. On another day, when the weather was cooler and he had more strength, he might have explored the place properly. But today was different. Today, he had not come here to challenge himself. He had come to bring something nourishing home for Tieu Lac, and now the basket in his hand was already full enough. Quan straightened his back slowly, feeling the strain in his waist. He looked down at the clams one more time. Some were large, some medium-sized, and all of them were fresh from the clear upper stream. They would be enough to make a good dish. More than enough. "No need to go farther," he said quietly. Milu, still waiting on the bank, wagged its tail, as if it had been hoping to hear those words. Quan smiled and began to make his way back toward the shallower part of the stream. The return from the deep pool was even more careful than the way in. With a heavy basket in one hand, his balance was not the same. He stepped slowly, placing his feet only where the rocks looked steady. A few times, the current moved against his legs, and he paused until he felt stable again. When he finally reached the bank, Milu came closer at once. Quan set the basket down under a patch of shade and crouched beside it. He rinsed his hands in the stream, washing away the mud from his fingers. There were small scratches on his skin, nothing serious, but enough to show that the clams had not come easily. He looked at the basket again. The shells were piled together now, wet and shining in the light. Quan touched the top one with his fingers, then nodded with a satisfied smile. "Let's go home," he said to Milu. Tieu Lac is waiting. Back at the farm, the black bean sweet soup had begun to give off a soft, warm scent. Tieu Lac stood near the stove, watching the pot carefully. The beans had softened little by little, and the water had turned dark and rich. She adjusted the fire so it would not boil too strongly. On a day like this, even standing near the stove made her sweat, but she did not mind. This was something she wanted to do. Every now and then, she lifted the lid and checked the beans. Then she looked toward the yard, listening for footsteps, for Milu's bark, for any small sign that Quan had returned. But the farm remained quiet. Outside, the sunlight was still harsh. The vegetable beds glistened faintly from the water she had given them earlier, but the dampness was already disappearing. The trees stood still, their leaves drooping slightly under the heat. Tieu Lac walked to the doorway and looked down the road. Nothing yet. She pressed her lips together, trying not to worry too much. Quan had told her the stream was far. He had told her the rocks were difficult and the water was deep. It was normal that he would take time. If he returned too quickly, maybe that would mean he had not found anything. But if he stayed away too long, her heart could not help feeling uneasy. She turned back to the stove. "Just come back safely," she whispered. The sweet soup continued to cook slowly. As she waited, Tieu Lac prepared 2 bowls and set them aside. She also placed a basin of clean water near the entrance so Quan could wash his hands and feet when he came back. She did not know exactly what he would bring home, but she knew one thing clearly. When he returned, he would be tired. And before he did anything else, he had to rest. Meanwhile, Quan had started down the road from the stream. The basket of clams was heavy in his hand, but his steps felt lighter than when he had arrived. The heat was still pressing against him. His shirt was soaked and his skin felt hot wherever the sun touched it. Milou walked beside him, sometimes looking up, sometimes trotting ahead before turning back. Quan did not complain. Every bit of tiredness had a reason now. He had something to bring home. Not just a few clams, but many. Enough to cook properly, enough to make a fresh, nourishing meal for Tieu Lac after the long days of farm work and the heavy summer weather. The path back passed through the same dry grass, the same uneven stones, the same open patches of land where the sunlight seemed to rise from the ground. But because he was returning with the basket full, the road no longer felt empty. In his mind, he had already begun thinking about how to prepare the clams. They needed to be washed well first, then soaked to release the sand. After that, he could cook them into a light soup, maybe with ginger, maybe with herbs from the garden. Something simple, clean, and easy to eat in this weather. Tieu Lac did not need anything too heavy. She needed something warm enough to nourish her, but gentle enough for a hot day. Quan lowered his eyes to the basket and smiled. "Worth it," he murmured. At the farm, Tieu Lac heard a faint sound from the road. She paused. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it. The heat made everything feel distant, and the quiet yard often played tricks on her ears. But then came another sound, light footsteps, and then Milou's familiar bark. Tieu Lac's eyes brightened at once. She quickly turned down the fire under the pot and stepped toward the doorway. Outside, the sunlight was almost blinding, but she still looked toward the gate without hesitation. There, beyond the bright yard, a figure was slowly coming closer, Quan. His clothes were damp, his face was tired, and in one hand, he carried a basket that looked much heavier than when he had left. Milou ran ahead first, tail wagging, then turned back as if proudly leading him home. Tieu Lac stood at the entrance, waiting. She did not call out loudly. She only watched him approach, her worry slowly turning into relief. Quan lifted the basket slightly when he saw her. Even from a distance, Tieu Lac could see the clams inside, many of them, large and fresh, piled together from the stream. Quan had truly found them. He had gone through the harsh sun, the rocky path, and the deep water, and he had brought back a whole basket of wild clams to nourish her. Tieu Lac's hands tightened softly at her sides. Behind her, the black bean sweet soup was still warm on the stove. In front of her, Quan was finally coming home. And between them, the day had not ended yet. The meal still needed to be prepared, the clams still needed to be washed, and there were many things they had not said out loud. But for now, it was enough. Quan had returned with the clams, and Tieu Lac was there, waiting for him. In this episode, Quan leaves the farm under the intense summer heat to search for wild clams in a rocky stream. Although Tieu Lac wants to go with him, Quan asks her to stay home because the path is dangerous, the water is deep, and the temperature is too harsh. While Quan carefully searches the hidden pools, he discovers many large wild clams buried beneath the mud and stones. Each clam gives him more motivation because he wants to bring home something fresh and nourishing for Tieu Lac. Meanwhile, Tieu Lac stays at the farm, waters the plants, and prepares black bean sweet soup to cool Quan down when he returns. By the end, Quan comes back tired but successful, carrying a basket full of clams, while Tieu Lac quietly waits for him at home.